Welcome to the Providers Report, where we delve into the world of value-based healthcare. Our mission is to empower healthcare providers with the knowledge and tools they need to deliver exceptional patient care. Each episode, we explore best practices, innovative strategies, and real-world examples of how to achieve the highest standards in patient communication and outcomes. Join us as we transform the future of healthcare, one conversation at a time.
Hey guys, welcome to Better Doctor Project, where we interview healthcare providers to tap into their experiences so we can turn our challenges into our biggest strengths. We hope today's episode inspires you to take that next step to become who you want to be in practice. I'm Dr. Beck.
And I'm Dr. Mack.
Let's get started. Season 2, we are here. Welcome to episode 1. For the listeners who are brand new, welcome to Better Doctor Project. For our returning BDP fam, thank you so much for sticking with us for yet another season. We have an incredible lineup of healthcare providers looking to share their knowledge and help us all grow one step closer into being the best providers we can be. Today's episode is all about doctor-patient communication. Why is it even important? Why should we do it? Is there a right or wrong way to do it? And what do we do if one of our patients might take things a little too far? Our guests today are two primary care physicians who have built their entire practice centered around a model where patients come first all of the time. They're running a direct primary care office in Michigan, and their patients are loving the top-notch care they receive that is just so different from what they've experienced in the past. What's the magical secret? Well, the two docs honestly just have the BDP mindset. They know what matters, they want what's best for the patients at all times, and what end result do they get? Better patient outcomes, better patient care, and ultimately happier patients. Hey everybody, we are here with Dr. Matt and Dr. Nick, and we're going to be talking tonight about just general patient communication and why there are certain things we can do in our office to better that communication. You know, our patients should have access to us, but what is too much access? What is the perfect amount? How can we do this more efficiently? So thank you guys so much for joining us. I can't wait to tap into this.
Thanks for having us again.
So obviously you guys are family practitioners, PCPs, and you have a direct primary care model, which is incredible. So it's opened up this avenue for really, really good patient communication. What is your, each of you, if it's different, but what is your personal favorite way to communicate with your patients?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one to answer. It depends on the scenario and depends on the patient, right? It's kind of like most commonly we'll text with patients. But honestly, I'd much rather call someone because I feel like you get more direct information, and text or emails can easily be misinterpreted a wrong way too. So if someone has like something quick they want to know, or they want to send me a photo, just text it to me, easy peasy. But if it's anything that's going to require more than a yes or no answer, just call me.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So for each patient, do you usually ask them on a first visit what they prefer, or how does that work?
Yeah, it gets interesting too from a kind of a HIPAA compliance standpoint, which the HIPAA laws with regards to practices outside of the insurance world are kind of interesting, and I'll leave that to its own. But basically, the first thing we do when we meet people, or one of the first things, is talk about HIPAA compliance, and then that texting and email aren't considered HIPAA compliant. It's not called G Suite anymore, but whatever Google renamed it. And we have a BA with them. It is kind of HIPAA compliant. We still don't treat it that way. Our text messaging system if you're texting me, it feels like you're just texting me. On our end, it actually goes to the EMR system. We get a notification, and then we go check it on that. We can do it on our phones and get back quickly with the mobile browser. But still, it's not exactly texting. And we've had people, a couple, but just say, no, I don't feel comfortable with that. I was like, great. And we just don't do that with them. They get snail mail and they get phone calls for everything. And most people will just text us and feel fine with that. But it's definitely something we address right away, because the last thing we want to do is mislead someone and have something come up with it.
Well, I also know you guys have been a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of this. I mean, even before the COVID-19 pandemic, you were already tapping into these, more advanced technological ways to talk to patients. Do you find that you've changed the way you communicate with COVID-19? Do you find that maybe going forward, this is going to be a little bit different?
So the only thing that's changed is when people call us is we have to try to get them to believe that we didn't just start this because of COVID-19. It comes up a lot, like, oh, so you don't want to see me because of COVID-19? Like, no, I just don't think you need to be seen today. You don't have to leave work to do this. We can just do it over the phone, and it really has been a thing because of the big push towards telemedicine that people think that we just adapted, and trying to get them to understand that this has been a core part of not just direct primary care, but a lot of groups, but for us too, from the beginning. In the EMR system we picked, which is Atlas MD, we picked specifically in part because it did have the ability to text built in. It did have the ability to make video calls into it. That was part of the expectation from day one that we would use that. And really, we haven't had to adapt at all to COVID. I mean, any more than I think anyone else, as far as like if you're running any other business. But as far as a healthcare group, we haven't had to adapt at all.
So obviously there are still some primary care offices out there that either don't have an easy form of communication. Maybe it's an older practice model. Maybe the provider is, in his or her 50s, 60s, 70s. So for those offices, where do you find they might struggle by not having that communication? What do you think that they're going to lack in their office that you guys clearly have?
I mean, the video doing video visits is a tough transition for people who are still used to doing paper charts. There's a lot of practices out there that I believe are struggling for doctors who are in their probably 50s and 60s. It's just a hard transition to make if you're just so used to being face to face to someone, and now you're stuck doing your, single finger typing, trying to get your notes done. Those sort of things. It's very difficult. So I think that would be, I guess just adjusting to the care model overall is just, I can't imagine. We grew up with that, so that's fine. But for them, I kind of feel for them. I've even heard of some people just not wanting to, every time you have to switch an EMR, that's bad enough. But now you're trying to switch the way you actually deliver care within that EMR. And you're often doing the video stuff outside of the EMR, so you have to document separately, and it's a whole disaster. Again, for us, we can do it relatively efficiently, and we can even bring up a separate screen and document while we're doing the video visit. In a lot of other places, that's just not necessarily the case.
Do you find that there are some generational differences, like in your patients, like we touched on generational differences maybe between the providers of whether or not you grew up with these kinds of technologies? Are there generational preferences in your patients on the way that they choose their care to be delivered?
The short answer to that is yes. I'm trying to think about this specifically from a DPC world because we have a couple different jobs here. But honestly, we have at least one patient I know of that we've never met in person yet because they signed up during COVID. So they wanted to do video visit or just do phone calls and texts. So, in a pre-COVID world, that would never happen, So people are getting care in ways even without ever physically seeing their physician. And there's a lot of things we can do without seeing people, but, we still have to get the history. We still have to do all of that, get previous records and whatnot. But I think a lot of things are still being put off. All the wellness stuff and all the health maintenance, a lot of that's being put off, and we're seeing some of that. But in general, we're keeping up with everything we should be doing.
Yeah, and I think that like the health maintenance thing, as an example, is kind of tricky. It depends how you think of it, right? Because you're missing the physical exam, but most of a physical is really going to be discussion about the cancer screens or the questions or the other things, and there's no barrier between doing that, unless you're not going to get paid because you're not billing for a physical, and then obviously that's an issue, not a problem for us. I think really on both sides, so maybe it's generational. This idea that having a conversation remotely isn't really different if you're in the room or not. It might feel a little different, but what you're actually doing is literally the same. And it's a difficult barrier to get over mentally. There's a lot of people that struggle with that. We have a somewhat interesting practice because we haven't opted out of Medicare yet, which means we can't see Medicare patients in our practice unless we want to set up to bill Medicare, which frankly we don't. So, so all of our patients are 64 or under. And from that, whatever's missing above that, people have been pretty much the same. We have maybe 2 or 3 people that just opted out of texting completely because of HIPAA and things we talked about earlier. We have one person that just sends us a money order every month because she doesn't want to send us a check or do the direct withdrawal or anything. But for the most part, it's been pretty uniform. People tend to like to text first, which frankly I like too, and then I can get back and call you. But there are a group of people who will always call and leave a voicemail and will just never text us. But I don't think, at least as far as I can remember, that it's really a generational thing, more of a personal preference thing that goes across the generations.
I would imagine even for those who prefer to be seen in person or who really want to have a feeling, right, that their doctor is listening to them and they're really having a strong conversation, I would imagine that the model that you guys are currently in, actually the direct primary care model, would allow you to have time, right, with those patients. So it's kind of neat because your perception of time is easily changed, right? We could have a conversation with someone like we're doing right now, and it could feel like 30 seconds have gone by, or it could feel like we were talking for 4 hours. And it really just depends on the environment and the way that you communicate with the other individual. So are there certain ways that you approach your patients that you use to make them feel more connected to you when you are physically distanced?
That one is, I don't think we do anything different except just, we just try to make sure to listen, the last thing you want to do when you're talking with your doctor, especially if you're having concerns, is just feel like they're doing something else. It's one of the bigger concerns about even in the room with people, the common thing that we hear is, well, my doctor's, talk on the computer all the time and they don't listen to me, or they're not looking at me, or, then that's even outside of, well, they only spend 10 minutes with me. Doing the video thing is always going to be a little more impersonal. But since we already have that established relationship, we don't necessarily have that issue. A lot of PCPs out there are they don't even know half their panel. They may see someone once a year, if that, or they may be seeing someone else on the care team and not even their PCP. So when you do get to see them once every couple of years, they're like, well, who is this guy? I don't even know if I trust them. I haven't seen them in a while. For us, we've already, oftentimes with our first visit, we'll sit down for, like I said, an hour. Nick has reportedly spent 3.5 hours with someone before. I wasn't there for that, yeah. But yeah, since we already have those established relationships, they know that our patients know that we care and that we, legitimately want to sit there and just listen and see what we can do to help them. And doing the video thing doesn't really change that for us. At least I don't feel like it changes.
Yeah, I think the answer is short and sweet and nothing consciously. I think we're pretty personal people, and I think we just try not to be different. And I think that's what a lot of people do when they end up on whatever alternative kind of phone call, video call, whatever. They try really hard to let people know that they care, but it kind of ends up forced or changes whatever makes them great in the first place.
Yeah.
No different than what we're doing now, hopefully all being more or less ourselves and it's comfortable. Mm-hmm. And I think that maybe I just tricked myself into answering it differently, making it comfortable. And if you're trying to force it, then it may not feel very comfortable to the person on the other side either.
Just be a good, genuine human.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I know patients really appreciate that. And, me being in the field that I'm in and primarily focusing on musculoskeletal healthcare, when something comes into my practice and I have to refer out or I have to collaborate with a primary care physician, it's almost sad. But the first thing I have to ask that patient is, do you have a relationship with your primary care physician? And in my naive mind, I shouldn't have to ask that. Like in a perfect world, you would just be able to contact your PCP. But for example, I think it was just a week or two ago, I had a patient who I hadn't treated him. We hadn't even started anything. And I just laid him down supine and he immediately went dizzy, started profusely sweating. And so I brought him back up immediately. I sat down and I said, okay, we're going to have a conversation right now. I did an exam, asked him a bunch of questions, obviously, to get to the bottom of the problem. And it turns out, no surprise, it was a hypertensive issue. His blood pressure was through the roof. I took it like 4 times to be on the safe side, both digitally and manually. And so I sat him down and I said, okay, when's the last time you saw your PCP, which was just a week ago? I was like, do you have a good relationship with them? Can we contact them right away? And thankfully, I mean, he was on the older side, I think late 60s. So he had a better relationship with his. But I know that if that would have happened with some of my younger patients, which it has happened, most often they're like, oh, I haven't seen mine in 5 to 7 years. Or, I have no idea. I've seen the PA every single time I've been there. And they don't feel like they can pick up a phone or just instantly contact that office, which breaks my heart. I don't want to send all my patients to ER if I don't have to. And it's been really challenging in my field to see how many people truly don't have that open line of communication. And that's why I love what you guys do so much, because you're creating an environment for your patients where they don't have to be put in that situation. If your patient came to my office, had a question about a medication or, anything non-life threatening, I would be able to say, hey, let's get your PCP involved with this. They could pull out their phone and text you on the spot, which is incredible.
And truly, how do you set those barriers can be a little tricky. But at face value, really, it's beneficial on both sides of the table. It's frustrating working in the insurance system when you tell someone like, hey, I need you to tell me if something's changing. And some people are just never going to do that. But a lot of people they just don't think it's a real offer, or they do try and they get stuck on a phone tree, or they talk to the triage nurse or whatever it looks like. And they're not having the interaction that they expect. They expected that you'd be sitting there at the desk to pick up the phone, which maybe that's an unreal expectation too. But still, no one's getting either side of it. And I say this a lot too to people. Like, if I don't hear from you, I'm going to assume everything's okay, because that's how I sleep at night. And if it's not, I need you to let me know. And that you be able to send us a text or send us an email, whatever modality you want, knowing that we're going to get back to you in a reasonable amount of time, is beneficial for both of us. Where you draw that line's a little bit tricky. Fortunately, we try to set that up kind of in the initial conversation with people. Like, look, if it's an emergency, just call 911. You're welcome to call us, but if you're having a heart attack, like, don't waste your time on me. If it's something pretty urgent, you need to be seen today, you have a question you really need to answer now, call us, leave a voicemail if we don't answer. In part because we don't have any front desk staff at our office. It just goes right to one of us, and we get back to it as quick as we can. Which, as it turns out, is pretty much exactly the same thing as leaving a message with a person. And then, if it's something that you need done in the next day or so, text us. If it's something you need done in the next couple of days, email us. And typically we'll get back faster than those things anyways. The issue is, when you get that text that's a little too personal, or you get someone who wants to leave the professional relationship behind, and we tend to be friendly with our patients, we tend to be friendly in general. Personally, I find it's kind of best just to kind of address it and say, this, I feel uncomfortable with that. And most people will feel a little embarrassed, and they'll say, oh, I'm really sorry. And then it becomes a little bit more of that balance. Like, I'm not upset. This is just not what I feel comfortable with. And people are pretty understanding with that once the initial situation kind of dies down a bit in the first few seconds.
When it's late like that, so like you mentioned 9 o'clock at night, are there some boundaries that you set for yourselves or for your families? Like, when you do respond, if you hear that little blip of your phone go off at 2 a.m., if you even keep the ringer on and you need to check if that's urgent or not, do you do that? Or do you just kind of set an expectation with your patients that if it's past a certain point at night, you will respond the next day?
Kind of. I think some of this comes from our training, where if you got paged, you had 15 minutes to get back to it. It didn't matter what time of day or night it was. And that's still a real situation for us. People may be reaching out with a somewhat serious condition. So I think that the shortest answer is we always check it. But if I look and it's someone that needs a refill, or someone's just asking for something that can clearly wait till the next day, I'll often just, all right, I'll take care of that in the morning. Or if it's something, even on a Saturday afternoon that clearly could wait till Monday, sometimes we'll let it wait till Monday. People are really understanding about that. it's interesting to me the number of times that someone sent us a text that I've responded to, within 10, 15 minutes, whatever, 3 minutes, whatever it looks like. And they say, oh, I thought you'd deal with that on Monday. Texted me.
Well, it's one of the easy redirections. The funny thing that people do get that really, Nick and I talk about, familiar with. It seems like on a semi-weekly basis now is try to make sure that a lot of these things that come up that's more of a pseudo stress us out a little bit are the expectations we put on ourselves, not necessarily what the patient is putting on us. Cuss words or dirty memes or anything like that. If someone texts us at 9 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night. So that tends sometimes it seems a little bit random what they may be saying, and we'll get back to them, and then we find out like a couple days later that, oh, you didn't have to get back to me then. But it was like our expectation of ourselves was email that higher up, and really the patient really didn't need to be answered that night. And that sort of stuff like we have to address right in the moment. And we got a handful of patients that way that will just send us information that's more of a statement rather than I may address it in the evening. But sometimes that gets, when you get something like that, it's hard to interpret sometimes over text message. Figure out what's going on and then try to readdress it and say this just is not an appropriate way to communicate.
I'm literally reading a text message from a patient right now.
But when people have these easy access, you'll get that every once in a while.
But no, it just happens. And like, we'll get things sent to us like, oh, hey, I saw this resource. I thought you might like it for other patients. And sometimes it's really nice stuff. But again, frankly, I think Matt had said this once before, we tend to shoot from the hip a lot when it comes to how we act with people and just try to take it naturally. And that's the thing. If I see something and it's 8:45 at night and I'm not really in bed or anything yet, I'll just respond half the time. Or if I just want to take care of it so I don't have to deal with it tomorrow, I'll take care of it then too.
Well, and I think, I don't know how your practice is, but I know with mine, you tend to have, that small cluster of patients who, they're what I call repeat offenders, where if, let's say there's one patient who only messages you at midnight every single time, or that one patient that always contacts you because they need something in 3 minutes sharp. So the people who kind of develop those patterns, you have to almost learn how to set those expectations and boundaries a little bit different. For example, today's actually my last day at work before I leave for maternity leave. And I was completely booked, like unable to see any other patient today. And one of my lovely patients, but also a repeat offender, called and she wanted to get in literally like 30 seconds. And my staff had to tell her, like, there's actually no way, like she's completely booked. She's already staying late. I worked through my lunch. I stayed after hours for patients. I mean, there was literally no way I could have fit her in. And unfortunately, that expectation had been set long ago that could happen every single time. And when it works, do I make it work? Of course. But I think patients also need to know that we are human. We will do as much as we can for you, but it's not always going to be perfect every single day. So that's kind of where the expectations, I feel like, kind of fall into place. Like, you're probably not going to be able to answer at 8:45 p.m. every single night just because you did it one time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we talk about this really we try to say these things at the meet and greet as much as we can. And that's part of the reason why they oftentimes can take a long time, is that trying to describe our practice, number one, it's not just a 3-sentence thing, it's a long explanation. But also when you're talking about expectations or reaching out to us, any number of things can happen. So if I'm flying on a plane and I don't have service and Nick drops his phone in the toilet and you can't get a hold of one of us, that's not a reason to not go to the ER if you're having chest pain. Trying to talk to people about those expectations are huge. And oftentimes we'll answer text right in the moment, but even if it takes 30 minutes, if it takes an hour, if it's going, if someone's having symptoms that are that concerning and we're just not getting back to you right away, there has to be kind of that early set expectation that, things, you need to find another way to get your care, whether that's urgent care or if we feel like it's the ER, we just try to set that up front as best you can. And there are repeat offenders, yes.
When we were in the insurance-based system, I usually tell people want to be fit in same day, and they don't want to go to the urgent care, which I agree. But at the same time, they want you to fit in. They think of it as your time, but in reality, it's another patient's time. If I have an opening or something, great, yeah, let's get you in. But if you're really encroaching, you want me to give someone else less care because you want to be seen today. And in a similar way, when we're not in that world anymore. But if I'm not answering your text right away, those hour-long visits, you're like, I'm probably in with someone doing that. And that's why I'm not answering. And again, we really do try to put this all in that meet and greet as much as we can, or the first time it comes up, or whatever it is. And really, most people are reasonable. I mean, there's always going to be someone who's going to test you. There's always going to be someone that's a little different from the norm. But gosh, I think even in our experience with those people, it's gone well. One of the things I really like about direct primary care, although it's not unique to this, but I've heard some functional medicine practices set up similarly, where you spend a lot of time with people in the beginning. And that's one of the reasons that we've intentionally grown very slow, because we want to make sure we have that time to send someone, maybe an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, and then come back soon and we can keep it going. Because a lot of people are coming to you kind of in crisis, even if they don't know it. They've had all these problems. They don't know what's going on. It's never been under control. It's always been juggled in short visits and just never gotten handled, or at least not in a way that they could understand and deal with. And when you take the time to do that with people, you A, build a really strong relationship, and B, you get it under control for them. And all of a sudden that person that was a problem patient for every other provider they've met isn't. And now they text you once every 6 months to get their refills or something, or they get a cold or whatever it is. Suddenly this problem's been taken care of. And I think it makes sense when people hear it like that. But when you're stuck in the system and you're just kind of grinding through your day, it's just not even possible. It's really not.
I would also imagine your patients are then so much more invested in your practice too, because we as humans create that first impression so quickly. So having all those expectations set on the very first visit is so incredible, and to feel that you're taking the time to really get to know this individual, I would imagine would stick in your mind as a provider. So when their name pops up, even if you haven't seen them in a year, you're like, oh yeah, it kind of unfolds like a file in your head, everything about them, right? When you see them, it's such a grounding, great first experience. It's pretty amazing. And I love how much communication impacts our patients, and I think us too, and the connection we feel with all of our patients. And I think my favorite thing about this whole episode is that it really is the foundation for setting expectations, because if you don't deliver the expectations appropriately, there's no ground to stand on. You are speaking two totally different languages, and that's where the biggest issues occur, I think, in patient and provider success. And it is honestly something we talk about like every episode with Better Doctor Project. So I love it, because this is truly the heart of BDP is getting these messages across. So for those of us and our listeners who want to start tomorrow, how would you suggest they approach this, improving their communication, whether it's talking to a patient, setting expectations? Are there resources you guys love and use and have incorporated into your practice to help you have more effective communication strategies?
Oh, I don't know about resources. I guess the best resource is experience, at least in my mind, because we're still learning. I mean, there's every single week we have something that comes up, and Nick and I will. Mondays are our business days, or really our sit down and reflect days per se, about kind of what's happened the previous week or weeks or whatever. And we'll talk about, well, should we charge this person this fee? Should we give them a break this month? Should we do X, Y, Z, whatever? But really, it's just experience. I can't say we have a specific even guideline, and we take everything case by case, really. Really just being humans, being generous, trying to be, walk in someone else's shoes, try to see where they're coming from, and we'll take these things, together. We try not to make decisions individually, at least for the most part.
No, and I think like so many things in life, it's just the start. It's an interesting thing with communication, because the more you do it, the more people will communicate with you. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from patients over time. I mean, things I don't think I ever thought I would hear about, oh, I really appreciated this, or they'll start telling you about stories that they didn't like from other doctors or whatever that looks like. And I'm trying to think of a specific story. It just happens a lot, especially in the insurance-based one. I mean, the same skills that make us great in the role that we have now, or, at least we enjoy it, and we have the time to spend with people, were the things that would kind of keep us behind when we were working in the insurance space. Why is it always 10 minutes behind? Most of the time someone else was late or something else happened, but you never catch up because we're never willing to sacrifice someone else's time along the way to make that happen. If you get lucky and someone has a quick visit, so be it. But it really is, I think, the more that you communicate with people, the more they communicate with you, and it becomes more of a self-evolving process in its own way.
It just really becomes something natural, right?
Yeah.
Something we do every day. We're just talking to the humans in front of us and trying to help them as much as we can. I love that. Thank you, Dr. Matt, Dr. Nick, for being on today and opening this door for better communication with our patients. So we just really appreciate you guys coming on with us and sharing all of your experiences so we can all build off that together.
Thanks so much.
Doctors Nick and Matt are so great at what they do. We hope you were able to take away some nuggets from today's episode to get started on your focus toward better doctor-patient communication. I know personally it has made a huge difference in my office since implementing some of these newer strategies over the last year. These concepts aren't rocket science by any means, which is probably why they're not thrown into our curriculums in school quite as much, but they require acknowledgement and a sense of drive in order to take true effect. These things just don't magically happen on their own, but it's worth it. Trust me.
We loved connecting with you today on this episode of the Better Doctor Project. We can't wait to share our next podcast with you in just 2 weeks. Same time, same place. Until then, pop over to Instagram to follow us at Better Doctor Project or keep up with us at betterdoctorproject.com.
Thank you for tuning in to the Provider's Report. We hope you found today's episode valuable and inspiring. To stay updated with our latest episodes, subscribe to our podcast wherever you like to listen. For more resources and continuing education opportunities, visit our website. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of our patients and truly set a standard for value-based healthcare.